So in the early years of Playboy magazine, in an interview, my father said, "I want to live in a society where people are free to express unpopular opinions, because I know that that's how a society matures and grows." Yet it seems today, increasingly, we prefer, even seek out, opinions that affirm what we already believe. Across the political spectrum, there's a growing movement to cancel voices that we disagree with. From the left on college campuses, as conservative speakers are disinvited or shouted down. From the right, as a record number of books were censored in schools and libraries last year. And in both cases, the bottom line seems to be that we don't want to listen to opinions that we don't agree with. We want to silence them instead of engage with them, rebut them, seek to learn from them. Why? Why now? Is it so much more the case that we are unwilling to engage in civil discourse than ever before? The conventional narrative is we are a deeply polarized country with very deeply held opinions and different points of view. But I'm not sure that that's true historically. I mean, America was formed by people from every country, every nationality, every religion, every class, every race, every lifestyle. We are pluralism at its core. We both recognize and celebrate diversity. Baskin-Robbins, even in the 50s, knew we needed 31 flavors. So maybe it's the case that we've just become more focused, too focused on that which divides us. There was a book written 15 years ago called The Big Sort: Why the Clustering of Like-Minded Americans is Tearing America Apart. And in these last 15 years, that sorting by geography, by friends, even by our sources of information, has just intensified. And the result is we tend to live in our own bubble. We're surrounded by like-minded people. We think only one way is the right way to think about issues. Yet dogma rarely helps anyone understand the real world. Surveys show that a growing number of us are concerned about threats to democracy, to democratic values like a free press, a just society, voting rights. And yet, underlying democracy has to be a respect for the pluralism that's America and a respect for the diversity of ideas that is America. And I think if we can build back that respect, we can begin to have a more civil discourse and we can build back our democracy. Moreover, I would argue celebrating diversity is not just good for our society, it's actually good for our economy. There's a reason America is the source of innovation, that we are the leader in entrepreneurship, in science and medicine and technology and communications. Because all the research shows that when you bring diverse groups of people together with different experiences and different vantage points, the ideas they come up with, the solutions they come up with, are vastly better. I live in Chicago, and the University of Chicago has become renowned for codifying its commitment to pluralism and free speech. Here's what their speech code says. The university's fundamental commitment is to the principle that debate or deliberation may not be suppressed because the ideas put forth are thought by some, or even by most members of the university community, to be offensive, unwise, immoral, or wrong-headed. I would argue that just as campuses should be devoted to intellectual diversity, free inquiry, civil discourse, so should our society. So what can we do? Well, I think we should start by valuing a free and independent press because they hold the powerful to account, they challenge orthodoxy, they expose us to a forum of ideas. We need them and they need our support. We can also work for structural change, like ending gerrymandering, so that voters get to choose their politicians instead of politicians choosing their voters. But at the end of the day, our institutions, be they the press, the legislature, the courts, they reflect us, our attitudes, our behavior, our values. So I'd like to suggest that one value we might consider elevating is a sense of humility, a sense that maybe I'm not always right. Early in my career at Playboy Enterprises, the company got into financial trouble. Its largest profit center were casinos in the United Kingdom, and it lost the licenses. That caused a $50 million loss, caused the stock price to plummet, the banks pulled the lines of credit, employees were panicked. So the board determined it should do a search to replace the president. I went to the board and I suggested that I be named president. My point was, it'll take 6 months to do the search, then another 6 months for the new executive to learn enough and build enough trust to feel confident to start making decisions and changes. And I would form an office of the president with the then chief financial officer, and we could begin immediately. I was 29 years old. I had never worked in another corporation. I didn't even have an MBA. By no stretch of the imagination was I qualified to lead the turnaround of a New York Stock Exchange traded company. To this day, I honestly don't know where I got the confidence, indeed the chutzpah, to think that I could do that. It obviously worked out okay, or I wouldn't be standing on this stage. But I tell you that story because as I stand on this stage today, unquestionably knowing much more than I knew back then, I am so much more humble. I am so much more sure that my opinion is just one opinion. That what I think, what I say, the advice to companies I work with, it's one point of view, and I could be wrong. That attitude has allowed me to become both an active listener and a lifelong learner. Moreover, along with a little more humility, we might do well to have a little more confidence in our resiliency. I don't know, the degree of worry that people can't handle ideas that are different than theirs or beliefs that challenge theirs. I just don't agree with that. And I frankly am really taken aback by the idea that some people are so fragile that they could characterize ideas and speech itself as violence. I think Salman Rushdie could powerfully testify to that false equivalency. In a recent poll, over half of Americans said the biggest threat to America is other Americans. Really? Intolerance fundamentally degrades our democracy. The First Amendment is not a democratic value or a Republican value, it's an American value. It's the cornerstone of our democracy. During the Cold War, the United States funded something called the Voice of America. It was a radio broadcast that went behind the Iron Curtain to promote the values of America. A free press, free market, the right to dissent, a just society. I think what we could really use right now is a voice of America in America. Thank you.